Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a major winter storm that's going to be moving through parts of the northern plains into the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and then into the interior northeast, and even parts of the coastal northeast might get in on a little bit of snowfall. We're going to be talking about what some of the models are showing, and then probably by tomorrow's video I'll have my snowfall forecast for at least the first part of this system. So here's what the current National Weather Service page is showing, and right now it is actually quite quiet, especially for much of the country, except for the northwest, where you actually have quite an active pattern coming up here. And we also, that's actually the area where our system is going to be coming out of. It's currently mainly over Washington and Oregon, and that's going to be moving into southern Canada, then dipping down into the Midwest, and then moving back through parts of the Northeast, kind of like this. And that's generally what our storm track is going to look like with this system. We have some high wind watches in that darker brown for parts of Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, South Dakota, and North Dakota, as well as some high wind warnings in that golden color for parts of Wyoming, Montana, and Oregon as well. And then we see some flood related watches and warnings and advisories in effect for parts of Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, as well as some winter weather advisories for more of the northern Rockies, as well as for northern Michigan. And we also have some winter storm warnings in effect for northern Washington, as well as west central parts of Idaho, and then some avalanche warnings are in effect as well for south central parts of Washington state there. So here's what the current GFS model one is showing, and we're going to play this through and just show you what this model is indicating for the system. We have that system where you can't really see it on the screen, but further to the north in Canada, we have a little system right here, and that's your low pressure. Now, the GFS, and I will warn you, the GFS does like to kind of do the warmer air in these systems, and also it does like to underdo how intense the systems are, so you will probably get a little bit more of a windier event than what this is showing, and also a little bit more of a colder and snowier event than what this is showing. And I think the European model has a fairly good handle on what is actually going to happen with this system. We see some scattered rain and snow showers, mainly snow showers in the higher elevations, maybe a little bit of rain in the lower elevations, and then the system continues to dip further to the south. And you can see, even though the GFS does like to usually weaken these systems, we do have an actually rather strong system with very strong winds coming out of the northwest in the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, and then back through the northern Rockies. So Thursday morning might actually be quite windy, especially if you live throughout those regions. Expect a fairly chilly, breezy air coming at about 40 miles per hour in gusts at times. So definitely beware and probably tie down any loose furniture you have outside, because that could definitely fly away in these types of wind gusts. We also have some scattered rain and snow showers according to the GFS over the northern plains, although I wouldn't be surprised if this is mostly snowfall. I wouldn't anticipate a lot of rain out of this, except for maybe for southern Iowa, northern Missouri, this area where it might be just a little bit too warm for some snow out of that first wave of this system. This would be by Thursday early in the afternoon. Here's by Thursday night, and we're starting to see the system dip down into parts of the northern Great Lakes. We see some heavy snow for the Great Lakes, and then you are starting to see a little bit of warmer air being pulled into the eastern side of the system. We have very cold air on that back end where temperatures might get down into the teens at times, so definitely watch out for some of those very, very chilly temperatures. Teens, maybe even single digits, are possible behind the system in the northern plains. We are looking at some moderate to heavy snowfall over the Great Lakes by this point, and then you start to see that as you're getting some of that warm air to be kind of pulled in, because when you're looking at this, we have the low pressure up here that's dragging in warm air because those winds are coming out of the south now. So you can see over Michigan and also into Ontario, we have a little slot of warmer air where you have some rain, and then on that western side of the system, we're dealing with snow. That's because we have much colder air on the west side of this storm, so watch out for a little bit of mixing. I think especially over these regions, you guys might have to contend with a little bit of mixing in here, because you're getting pretty much a straight southerly flow, and that'll have some fairly warm air to bring up with it, and that could inhibit a little bit more of your snowfall accumulations. This would be by Friday morning. Here would be by Friday afternoon and evening, and we're looking at a widespread amount of snowfall, but the main reason that's happening is because it's mainly lake effect. We're seeing most of this coming out of parts of Iowa and Illinois, and then as you're going into Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, most of this is going to be lake effect or just very, very weak precipitation from this system. It shouldn't accumulate to too much, although it will be cold enough that any snow that you do get will accumulate. So probably just about an inch or so of accumulation for a lot of those areas. Nothing major, but definitely could coat the grass and some of those colder surfaces. And then here would be by Friday night, here's by Saturday morning, and we're starting to see a secondary low pressure system form out here into parts of Vermont, and then we see that secondary, or that first low pressure system, dip down into Michigan, where that could help crank in a little bit more lake effect, especially over northern Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan, and then you could also get a little bit more lake effect through Indiana and northwestern Ohio if some of those bands of lake effect are strong enough, just by the way that this low pressure system is oriented. But the main show is now over the northeast, where you have that fairly weak system up there in Vermont and also into New Hampshire, and then we're going to see that this system is going to continue to move further to the east, and we're going to actually start to deal with some decent snowfall through parts of northern New England with a little bit of rain further to the south. We're dealing with very, very warm air moving up through into coastal Maine, and then the only reason that northern Maine is actually dealing with any snow, it's not because we have any cold air really in place. It's mainly just because we have already cold temperatures, just because it is winter time in northern Maine. Your average high temperatures are below 32 degrees anyway, so even though it is going to be warmer than normal, these areas might still be seeing a little bit of snowfall. And then on that back side, that's where you could see some snow into the coastal northeast and the rest of the northeast and mid-Atlantic in general, where you might get a bit of lake effect or just some precipitation that from the system is going to turn into snow because of how cold it will be behind the system. We're really thinking that these temperatures are going to be down into the 20s and maybe even some teens in some of those higher elevations or inland areas behind the system. It will be a fairly cold air mass. Here to be by Saturday night, and it's really moving out into parts of southeastern Canada by that point. So here's what the European model is showing with this system, and we see that a disorganized area of rain and snow showers through parts of the northern plains. You see that system by Thursday morning is dipping down into parts of Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, and then you're starting to see most of that rain switch over to snow for a lot of those areas in the northern plains. We're seeing some light to moderate snowfall, maybe even a couple of pockets of heavier snowfall through there. We have a wedge of cold air on the east side of the Appalachians with those below 32 degree temperatures, and then we have some more cold air wedging in on that western side. And again, the only area that's going to be above 32 is going to be the areas east of the system, which by this point would be over much of the Great Lakes, because your system by this point is centered somewhere over about Wisconsin by this point. So again, east of that system is where you're going to get into that warmer air, and then behind that system is where you're going to get into a lot of that colder air, and that's where most of your snowfall is actually going to partake on the northern and the western side of the system. And then here would be by Friday morning, here's by Friday afternoon and evening, we're dealing with a scattered area of some snow showers moving through the Great Lakes with the star of your system, which by this point is right down here, and this is eventually going to become your secondary low pressure system that moves up into the northeast. So you see that little area of energy that I highlighted in the mid-Atlantic continue to stream further to the north. We're still dealing with some snow on that back end of the system, but we're starting to see your first low pressure system, which is over about Lake Michigan by this point, start to fizzle out, and we're starting to see your next low pressure system try to form somewhere over this area in the northeast. And then we're going to deal with mainly higher elevation snowfall. But then again, as you get onto that back end of the system, don't be surprised if the red line here, which is your 32 degree temperatures, really do rush in quickly, and you might be able to push out a little bit of precipitation for some of those areas in the interior northeast and parts of the Great Lakes. And then this would be by Saturday night into Sunday morning. We're dealing with some scattered snow showers into parts of the Great Lakes, and those could definitely make it all the way down to close to the coast, probably over the interior mid-Atlantic, and then the areas like eastern Pennsylvania, southern upstate New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts. You guys might get into a little bit of snowfall, just because those winds will actually be quite breezy or gusty behind the system, as well with all that moisture still in the air. You will be able to pump out a little bit of lake effect off the Great Lakes there. So here's what the models are showing for snowfall out of the system. So here's what the European model is showing. We're looking at anywhere in the grays under an inch to 2 inches, 2 to 6 inches in the blues, and then in the 6 to 10 inch region, that's your purple area, and then anywhere in those pinks, that's where you're looking at 10 to about 15 or so inches of snowfall. And we're dealing with a scattered dusting of snowfall. Now, not all of this is going to stick, especially as you get further and closer to the coast, and then also down further to the south. You will have a little bit of issues with that sticking, although if you get if you just get a light coating of snowfall, the rest of that snowfall is probably just going to accumulate right on top of it, and it'll be much easier after you get that first little sheet of snow on the ground. It'll be much easier for the rest of that snow to accumulate. We're dealing with mainly that jackpot zone over Minnesota and Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan, and the main thing that I want to kind of focus your attention on is not really those numbers, not, oh, central Iowa is getting 5 inches, upstate New York is getting 6 inches. That's not what I'm really interested in. It's really where is that heaviest snowfall, and what I'm seeing here is that the heavy snowfalls over Minnesota and Wisconsin, as well as some of those higher elevations in the interior Northeast, and that's where the European model at least places that heaviest snowfall. Here's what the GFS does, and I highlighted where the European model had the highest snowfall, and you can see it somewhat matches up, although the GFS is further south and east, so the highest snowfall totals are in Wisconsin, northeastern Iowa, southeastern Minnesota, and of course these models are going to change. I think by tomorrow we'll have a much better handle on what may happen. Here would be what the Korean model is showing, just to give you another perspective. And I think this is really important to look at, just because not really those exact totals, that it's kind of right in between of what the GFS and the European model were showing. I think these amounts are a little bit overdone right here, but the main thing to look out for is that the Korean model, which is actually a fairly high resolution long-term model, it's not a short-term model, but it also does the longer range. It goes out about 288 hours, but it also does it in very high resolution, kind of like what you would see with the NAM 3cam model. It's a very high resolution model, and that's important because it can pick out those tiny bands of snowfall that might set up. Now, it's not important to look at exactly where that's going to set up, because this is going to vary every run, but something that the European and the GFS won't pick up on is this little stream of heavier snowfall. So watch out if you're in Tennessee, Kentucky, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, northern Missouri, for some potential higher accumulations where you're in a band that's about 5 miles wide that's getting kind of just pummeled with some snowfall that might accumulate to a couple inches, while you go maybe 5 or 10 miles north or south or east or west of you, and you're dealing with just a very light dusting of snowfall. So that's the most important thing that I'm taking away from this model, is that we could be dealing with some isolated higher amounts in a very isolated fashion. And then here's what the Canadian model is showing, and you can see it actually agrees a lot more with the GFS, because it is further to the south and east of what the European model is showing, and also those amounts are more are higher and also more widespread than what the other models were showing. And then here's what the German model is showing, just for another opinion here. And you're also seeing what I was talking about with those isolated areas where you're getting maybe an inch or two, a couple inches of snowfall, but it does remain closer to what the European is showing with the heaviest snow over Minnesota and some of the surrounding locations. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. I'll definitely have my snowfall forecast probably out by tomorrow as the models get into more agreement. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.